East Sussex is a county with a very long and very beautiful coastline, and most of the population of the county actually live close to the sea. And of course tourists come in their millions to East Sussex to see that sea and to use the marine environment. The county council is very interested in the coastal environment and marine environment, and particularly what is the health of that environment and what's going on under the sea.
I think it's very important that the general public in Sussex realise that there's more to the coast than Brighton Beach, and that actually out there's a lot of very interesting, important wildlife.
Mounting pressure from human activity poses a serious threat to the marine environment, but so little is known about the seabed around our coasts that it is difficult for anyone to make sound and careful decisions about conservation and protection.
At the moment, legislation for protection of the marine environment is very thin. There's only one national marine nature reserve in England at the moment, and we'd like to see more.
Over the past few years, teams of volunteer divers have been surveying the Sussex seabed in an attempt to highlight valuable and interesting sites worthy of special protection. The project is known as Seasearch. Under the guiding hand of Robert Irving, the Sussex Seasearch coordinator, groups of divers gather at weekends, first to be instructed in the survey method, and then to study and record the wildlife and habitats of the seabed.
Right, well, thanks for coming down today. Most of you have taken part in the project before already, and but I know some of you haven't, so I'll just run through what we're trying to do for those who are new to it. Essentially what Seasearch is all about is trying to describe the seabed, and that involves both the physical aspects of the seabed, whether you've got bedrock or boulders or cobbles, and the biological cover that's associated with that. So what we're trying to do is get an idea of the different types of seabed that are around, and where you've got the physical description and the biological description together, it constitutes what's known as a biotope. And we're trying to see how many different biotopes we've got off the Sussex coast. This chart then just shows you the sites that we've got, and the ones we've looked at already. Littlehampton on the westward side of what we're looking at the moment. We've done some areas here about 6 weeks ago, and we've done one training day out from Brighton, and then yesterday we did various sites here as well. But there is quite a lot of the area here that we still need to look at.
But in order to compile a chart such as this, careful records have to be made of where each pair of divers enters and leaves the water.
Sailing buoys that we'll see, an upright buoy. This is a very useful piece of equipment that we've got for the use during the project. It's called a GPS, or Global Positioning System device. It allows you to be able to plot your position very accurately, well, plus or minus 30 meters or so, and it's very easy to use. When you get down to the seabed on your dive,
the divers use waterproof guidance notes as an aid memoir.
The prompt sheet you may find useful because on the left-hand side of it, it gives you various definitions of what we're, say, calling gravel and pebbles and cobbles. And then if you move over to the right-hand side, it gives you an idea of the sorts of things that you might find either attached to those or as mobile species. Great, thanks very much. Have a good day.
When the divers first arrive on the seabed, they make a note of their depth and then look around to assess the type of habitat that they are on. Once they have noted down the seabed type, they then start to investigate the animals and plants living on it, as Robert Irving explains.
It's possible to distinguish different depth zones by the type of seaweed present. In shallow water, there'll be kelp growing on boulders and bedrock, and its presence defines what we're calling as shallow habitats. The medium depth category is where it's deeper and hence darker than where kelp can survive, but there are still brown and red seaweeds present. Then the deep categories are where there's insufficient light for seaweeds, and it's entirely dominated by animals, such as anemones, sponges and sea squirts, as well as crabs, whelks and various fish.
Sussex Seasearch began as a continuation of a succession of more intensive and certainly more expensive sublittoral surveys, and in 1991 the House of Commons Select Committee on the Environment suggested that the sublittoral, the seabed below the low water mark, should be included in plans for the coastline. David Harvey again.
As a result of that, we in Sussex became quite concerned that if things like coastal zone management plans went ahead, or shoreline management plans, then they might leave out the sublittoral. And so we decided that we ought to try to bring together all the information that we had on the sublittoral and maybe look at ways of improving this.
What sort of diver is needed to take part in Seasearch? Bob Foster-Smith, who runs a complementary survey known as Biomar, explains.
Well, Seasearch is designed primarily as a project for volunteer divers to become interested in their own local environment, marine environment. So it's very much designed around local people and their diving on their doorstep. It's a very good way, I think, for divers to become interested in marine life and to teach themselves a little bit more about the variety of marine life, the organisms that they can see on the sea floor. Seasearch is a very good way for people to become slowly lead themselves into doing projects which will actually contribute valuable data to conservation assessment surveys. It's very much designed to be a level of entry where very little knowledge is required, but that as your expertise build up, obviously the amount of data and the quality of the data that you produce increases all the time.
By taking part in Sussex Seasearch, divers will be making a very real and valuable contribution to the National Marine Database. And, as the head of the Marine Nature Conservation Review, David Connor, explains, this will all help the cause of marine conservation.
The Seasearch information can help in several ways in actually benefiting marine conservation. Sometimes we find that the information from Seasearch surveys is actually very valuable and turns up really useful information about the importance of marine species and habitats. For instance, one Seasearch survey in a Scottish sea loch found some very dense beds of a sea cucumber in quantities of several hundred per metre squared, and this particular habitat is extremely rare within Britain as a whole. So that provides direct information about the importance of that particular sea loch and contributes to our overall knowledge of the importance of that area.
Probably no more than about 50% so far has been looked at in any detail, and large areas have no information at all. So it's enormously valuable in one sense, and that is in producing the first stage mapping of the seabed, and it gives us clues as to where we should be looking to do more detailed work. It's identifying a number of sites which are interesting or unusual because of the topography of the seabed or because of the communities that are associated with them. So far our experience has suggested that there may be up to 200 people who have been involved at some time in collecting the data. And that's an awful lot of people who have understood what we're attempting to do and will take that back and hopefully influence others. Many diving club members and members of MCS itself have been involved in these surveys. And I think it's a very interesting and rewarding experience as far as they're concerned, and they become quite enthusiastic about the whole idea of marine conservation and taking responsibility for their local environment.
An old friend of Cousteau's, Philippe Diolet, once said that many divers protest that they see nothing because they are always on the move. The most exciting discoveries are reserved for those who can stay in one place for some time, compiling facts about all the likely rocks and crevices. Pleasure in the submarine world is usually the reward for attention to detail.